What if the first words humanity ever wrote were never meant to mark a beginning? What if they were the final witness statement of a world already slipping into silence, pressed into wet clay by hands that somehow understood that time was running out? In the deserts of southern Iraq, where the heat bends the horizon and the wind whistles through empty plains, ancient cities lie buried in the sand like memories someone tried to forget. Beneath collapsed walls and weather-shaped ruins, tens of thousands of clay fragments sleep in the dark, waiting. Each fragment is marked with tiny wedge-shaped impressions, like the tracks of birds frozen forever in mud. We call this writing cuneiform. It is not merely old. It is the oldest continuous record of human thought ever found on Earth. But something is wrong with the story these tablets tell. They don't read like the hesitant first steps of a civilization learning to think. They read like someone picking up a story already in progress. Like a culture trying not to invent something new, but attempting desperately to restore something ancient. Before we go any further, imagine this moment. You are listening in the dark, maybe in your room, maybe on a night drive, maybe somewhere far away where only your screen lights the silence. Wherever you are right now, type one thing in the comments, your location and the time. Let me see how far across time this mystery travels as you sink deeper into it. This story didn't begin with a dramatic revelation. It began with dust. In the late 1800s, European archaeologists arrived at an ancient site called Uruk. They came searching for treasure, expecting statues or golden artifacts forgotten by time. Instead, the ground opened into chambers filled wall to wall, shelf to shelf, with clay tablets. Not scattered, not random, organized, categorized, stored with intention, as if someone knew the future would try to erase them. Each tablet fit neatly in the hand, about the size of a modern paperback. Each was covered with cuneiform, packed edge to edge with symbols. When scholars finally cracked the code of the script, they expected to find primitive drawings or simple records. What they found instead broke the timeline of history. The tablets contained tax receipts, medical prescriptions, astronomical observations, legal documents, hymns written for gods whose names had been forgotten for millennia. This was not the work of a society learning to write. This was the work of a society that already knew. The people responsible for these tablets are known as the Sumerians. And from the moment their name entered history, something about our understanding of human origins began to fracture. Because Sumer does not arrive slowly, like other civilizations. It arrives complete. Around 3500 BCE, almost overnight in archaeological terms, cities erupt across southern Mesopotamia. They come with paved streets, irrigation networks, temples, complex social structures, trade systems stretching across continents, and a mathematical system based on the number 60, the same system that gives us 60 seconds in a minute and 360 degrees in a circle. Their script, one of the earliest forms of writing, already contains hundreds of symbols. Their temples align precisely with stars and solstices. Their laws outline social structures that sound shockingly modern. Their trade networks reach from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean. This is not how civilization begins. Civilization is supposed to crawl.
Stone, bronze.
Hut, village, city. Pictures, signs, language. But Sumer does not crawl. Sumer skips the line and walks on stage already speaking fluently. Historians have argued for more than a century, trying to make this make sense. Some insist we have simply lost the earlier stages, that time has erased the centuries where humans stumbled toward greatness. Others suggest the roots of Sumer lie somewhere still undiscovered, maybe underwater or beneath layers of silt. But the Sumerians themselves, they leave no room for such theories. On their tablets, they write, "After kingship descended from heaven, kingship was in Eridu. Not invented, not discovered, descended, restored. This is the restoration of what was before," they repeat, as though terrified the world might forget. Now imagine this. You stand inside a silent museum archive long after closing. The alarms are set. The lights hum softly overhead. You put on thin cotton gloves and lift one of these tablets from its resting place. It is heavier than you expect. The clay feels cold against your fingertips. You tilt it under the light, and the wedge marks shimmer back at you. Someone pressed each mark carefully, deliberately. Someone who lived 5,000 years ago. Then you notice something that changes everything. Fingerprints. A thumb pressed into the clay before it dried.
A ridge.
A whirl. A human identity frozen in time. That person lived before the pyramids. Before the Chinese dynasties. Before the Maya rose on the other side of the world. And yet, their fingerprints are here. They wanted to be remembered. Tablets from that era track Venus with accuracy no civilization would match again until telescopes. They teach compound interest. They prescribe medicines we now know scientifically work. They tell stories about a time before a great flood, when rulers lived for impossible lengths of time and beings descended from the sky to teach humanity the secrets of the stars. We call these myths. But when the same story echoes across continents and cultures separated by oceans and thousands of years, myth begins to sound a lot like memory. Something happened. Something big. Something the Sumerians were not trying to invent, but trying desperately to preserve. They were not announcing a beginning. They were whispering, "This is what we managed to save." Whenever we study ancient civilizations, we expect to see a ladder, a sequence of improvements, each building on what came before. We can trace Egyptian civilization step by step, from simple settlements to early temples to pyramids. We can watch Chinese writing evolve from pictographs on bones to complex characters. Civilizations grow slowly through trial and error. But Sumer? Sumer appears as if someone pressed a resume button on humanity. Cities like Eridu, Uar, Lagash, and Uruk don't start as scattered huts that slowly expand. They appear already planned, with districts, walls, drainage systems, temples, and administrative buildings. One city, Uruk, seems to explode into existence with walls stretching nearly 10 kilometers. Inside those walls were homes for tens of thousands of people, industries, religious complexes, and a centralized administration. The earliest layers show no primitive attempts, no experimental buildings that collapse, no failed irrigation channels, no crude versions of writing, just fully operational systems. It's as if someone handed the Sumerians blueprints. Their earliest writing, cuneiform, already consists of hundreds of symbols capable of expressing legal contracts, math, poetry, astronomy, and medicine. No development, no baby steps. That's why researchers gave it a name, the Sumerian problem, because based on everything we know about human development, Sumer should not exist. And yet, there it is, hammering our idea of history like a wedge pressed into clay. To understand how surreal this is, consider the culture that came right before the Sumerians in the exact same region. The Ubaid culture. Small farming settlements. Simple tools. Plain pottery. No writing. No monumental buildings. No math. No cities. Then, without warning, Sumer appears. Not gradually, not experimentally. Fully formed. The difference between Ubaid and Sumer is an evolution. It's an interruption. A break. A restart. Something happened. Something big enough to erase one world and leave survivors trying to rebuild the next. And the Sumerians told us exactly what that something was. The flood. Not a legend. Not an allegory. A dividing line in their history. Their texts describe the flood as a moment where time split in two. Before the flood, kings ruled for ages. Knowledge was abundant. Humanity lived differently. After the flood, life was harder. Cities rebuilt. Knowledge was incomplete. For centuries, scholars dismissed this as myth, until archaeologists started digging. At the city of Uar, in the 1920s, Sir Leonard Woolley discovered something that shouldn't have been there. A layer of clean, sterile clay nearly 2 meters thick. Above it,
A city.
below it, a different city, older.
Between them,
Nothing but mud. Not decades of flooding. Not seasonal deposits. One catastrophic event. A flood. The same layer shows up in Shuruppak, Kish, and Eridu, all dated to the time the Sumerians claimed the world changed. The Sumerians weren't telling stories. They were telling history. And suddenly, The myths start to sound like fragments of memory. A world washed away. A knowledge that was almost erased. A civilization trying to glue the pieces back together. The Sumerian king list. Then archaeologists found something that made everything even stranger. A clay prism covered in names and numbers, known as the Sumerian king list. On it, the Sumerians record every king who ruled before and after the flood. The earliest rulers are said to have reigned for tens of thousands of years. Absurd, unless those numbers mean something else. At first, scholars laughed. Then someone noticed a pattern. Those reign lengths aren't random. They are perfect multiples of a sacred number in Sumerian math. 3,600, a unit called a sar. The list isn't describing lifespans. It's describing epochs, cosmic cycles, time itself. Then comes the line. The flood swept over. After that, reigns shrink. Kings rule for decades, not millennia. We begin to recognize real historical figures. It's as if the king list is two different documents welded together. Before the flood, cosmic time. After the flood, human time. Someone somewhere understood cycles spanning tens of thousands of years. Who?
How?
From where? The Sumerians never say. We invented knowledge. They say, it was given. It was restored. It came from before. Like children inheriting books they cannot fully read. The language that shouldn't exist. Every culture on Earth has languages that evolve from something earlier. Except one. Sumerian. It has no parent language. No family tree. No cousins. It appears out of nowhere, fully developed, using complex grammar unlike anything around it. It's not related to Semitic languages like Akkadian. It doesn't match Indo-European. It doesn't connect to Dravidian, Uralic, or Caucasian languages. It's an orphan, a survivor. Like the last speaker of a dying tribe, writing down words that once belonged to millions. Some linguists believe Sumerian may be the last remnant of a linguistic family that vanished in the flood. And when a language has no ancestors, that means the people who spoke its ancestors
Are gone.
not migrated, not conquered,
Gone.
wiped out, replaced, restarted, just like the Sumerians kept telling us. By now, the pattern is impossible to ignore. A civilization that appears complete. A writing system born fully functional. Knowledge without development. A flood that erases the past. A language with no history. A culture that insists nothing they had was new. At this point, we are forced to ask, what exactly were the Sumerians restoring? And who, before the waters, taught humanity how to be human? Because the Sumerians had a name for those beings. One name whispered across tablets, temples, and myths. The Anunnaki. But before we go there, we need to understand what the Sumerians believed happened before humans existed. To do that, we must step into one of the strangest creation stories ever written. One that doesn't sound like magic. It sounds like manufacturing. Before the flood, before kingship, before cities, the Sumerians said there was work. Not worship. Not cosmic poetry.
Work.
The gods, according to their tablets, were tired. They maintained the world themselves, digging canals, shaping the land, moving the waters. The younger gods grew restless and exhausted. They gathered together, threw down their tools, and protested against their labor. This isn't how a myth usually starts. This sounds like a labor strike, and the solution they choose doesn't look like magic. It looks like a project. The gods decide to create a new kind of being, one that can perform the work they no longer want to do. But this is not a single, divine breath bringing humans into existence. It's a process, a procedure, a sequence of steps. The Sumerians described the goddess Ninhursag, also called the Lady of Birth, mixing clay with something else, the blood or essence of a god named Kingu. That mixture is shaped into forms, placed in a womb, and brought to life. If this is mythology, it's oddly specific. Ingredients, mixing, shaping,
Testing.
failure, adjustment, retrying. It reads like a lab notebook or a blueprint. The first humans are not perfect. Each prototype has a flaw. One cannot speak. One cannot see. Another cannot control its limbs. Another cannot reproduce. Each version gets assigned a role, and the gods continue refining. They try again,
And again.
until finally, they create a being that can follow commands, reproduce itself, and take over the labor of maintaining the world. In the biblical story, God creates humans in one sentence. In Greek myth, Prometheus molds them from clay once. In Egyptian belief, Khnum forms humans perfectly at a potter's wheel. But the Sumerians? They describe trial and error, iterations, rejected models,
Upgrades.
and something even more unsettling. Humans are not created for worship, not for glory, not for morality. They are created for utility, to dig canals, to gather food, to serve,
To work.
Humanity is a workforce, and the Sumerian word for the god essence, mixed into the clay? Temu, a word scholars translate as intelligence, consciousness, understanding. Something added, something inherited, something not of the earth. You can tell yourself it's metaphorical, but there's a reason this myth doesn't feel like a bedtime story. It feels like memory. The Anunnaki, not what you think. In modern pop culture, the Anunnaki have become space gods, aliens, interdimensional beings, wild claims with no grounding. The truth, found in the tablets, is stranger and quieter. The Anunnaki are described as decision-makers, organizers, givers of law and knowledge, teachers of agriculture, irrigation, writing, and timekeeping. They are not distant, celestial abstractions. They interact with humans. They argue. They make mistakes. They feel remorse. They eat, drink, and sometimes even mate with mortals. This isn't how divine beings are usually portrayed. Gods who can fail, gods who can get tired, gods who need help. They act less like almighty creators, more like overseers, administrators, a ruling class, a group of beings who came from somewhere else, established systems, and handed them off to humanity. In later myths, their memories blur and elevate into the supernatural. But in the earliest texts, the closest to the source, the Anunnaki are not omnipotent deities. They are teachers, knowledge bringers, civilization architects. They arrive. They organize. They teach. They leave. Over time, memory turns them into gods. But what if the Sumerians were describing, not gods, but people, or something like people? Something flesh and blood enough to walk cities, speak laws, and build systems, yet different enough that their presence felt divine? Myth and memory intertwine. And across the world, the same pattern appears. In Egypt, gods teach agriculture and writing. In India, devas descend to re-establish order. In Mesoamerica, Quetzalcoatl brings math and astronomy. In the Andes, Viracocha rebuilds after a flood. Different continents, different names, same job description. Someone arrives, rebuilds civilization, and disappears. If this were fiction, cultures shouldn't agree.
But they do.
If history were linear, development should be gradual. But it isn't. The Sumerians didn't say, "We are the first."
They said,
We are the ones who remember. If they are telling the truth, then the mystery doesn't start with Sumer. It starts with whatever came before. And that is where the trail leads next. Because beneath the flood silt, beneath the city ruins, beneath the clay tablets, lies evidence of a world that shouldn't exist, yet somehow did. A world whose fingerprints remain in the bones of our language, our math, our sky, and our myths. A world waiting to be rediscovered. If the Sumerians were restoring something older, then the question becomes, what came before them? Archaeologists expected the answer to be simple: villages, farming communities, perhaps early stone structures. Instead, they found hints of a world that did not match the story we tell ourselves about human history. A world that suggests civilization may have risen, fallen, and risen again. Somewhere in that forgotten age lies the origin of the knowledge the Sumerians inherited. And the first clue comes from something buried in mud. Cities before cities. In southeastern Turkey, At a site called Göbekli Tepe, archaeologists uncovered massive circular stone enclosures dated to as early as 9,600 BC, thousands of years before Sumer, before Egypt, before writing, before agriculture, before wheels, before pottery, before anything we associate with civilization. These structures are carved with intricate images: foxes, lions, birds, snakes, etched into pillars weighing up to 20 tons each. The official story of humanity says that hunter-gatherers of that era were primitive nomads with no permanent settlements. But Göbekli Tepe is not the work of nomads. It is architecture, complex, engineered, oriented to celestial patterns. There are no signs of farming, no signs of a settled village nearby, yet someone marshaled a workforce capable of cutting, transporting, and erecting massive stone structures that would challenge modern builders. This shouldn't exist, and yet, it does. More importantly, Göbekli Tepe wasn't destroyed. It was intentionally buried, covered with tons of soil, as if someone wanted to hide it. Someone knew a disaster was coming. Someone wanted something preserved for whoever survived. Just like the clay tablets, just like the Sumerians, a world erased. Around 12,800 years ago, something dramatic happened on Earth. The planet abruptly cooled. Animals vanished. Sea levels shifted violently. Entire species disappeared. Human populations collapsed. Scientists call it the Younger Dryas event. The Sumerians called it the time before the flood. Almost every ancient culture remembers it. The Bible calls it Noah's flood. The Sumerians call it the deluge. The Greeks describe Deucalion's flood. In India, Manu survives a great inundation. In Mesoamerica, worlds end in water. In Australia, Aboriginal legends recall rising seas devouring the land. Stories that should have nothing in common do. Warnings, waters, survivors, rebuilding. And when the waters receded, whoever survived rebuilt. Not from scratch, from memory. Sumer may not have been the beginning. It may have been the second act. Lost technologies of the first age. The Sumerians had a base, 60 mathematical systems still used in timekeeping. Advanced astronomy tracking Venus cycles for centuries. Written contracts, medical procedures, laws, schools. Civilizations do not invent all of this instantly. They inherit it. The Sumerians said, "This is the restoration of what was before." Archaeology now whispers the same thing. Human knowledge may not have begun in Sumer. It may have returned there, like a rescued archive, like a backup drive after a system crash. And there's a chilling detail. The oldest Sumerian astronomical records assume people were watching the skies for thousands of years before them. They weren't inventing anything. They were resuming observations someone else began. Someone before the flood. Someone the Sumerians called the ones who descended. The ones who measured the heavens. The Anunnaki. The language that carries ghosts. We've already seen that the Sumerian language has no ancestors. But buried within it are loanwords, fragments, from an even older language that no one has ever heard spoken. A linguistic ghost. A shadow tongue. You don't get a language like that unless you're copying, inheriting, or preserving something older. Just like the architecture.
Just like the math.
Just like the myths. Everything points backward. Everything points to something before. Something we lost. Something the Sumerians were terrified we would forget. The fingerprints of an age we don't remember. Look closely, and patterns appear. Maps older than the civilizations that supposedly made them. Astronomical alignments impossible without long-term observation. Megalithic structures built with precision we still struggle to replicate. Flood myths everywhere. Sudden appearances of agriculture, writing, and cities. It's as if the world rebooted. Most data erased. Fragments left behind. Sumer wasn't humanity's first attempt at civilization. It was humanity's first recovery program. A salvage operation. An act of memory. A reminder.
Not.
We began here.
But.
This is what we managed to save. And so the question changes. Not. Who taught the Sumerians?
But.
Who were the Sumerians trying to imitate?
Not.
where civilization started,
But
where it restarted,
not.
what myths meant,
But
what memory survived. Because memory is fragile. Clay can break, ruins can crumble, languages can die, but fingerprints endure. Pressed into clay by hands that knew catastrophe was coming, hands that wanted someone someday to listen. Up to this point, the Sumerians have left us breadcrumbs. A world before the flood. A knowledge that wasn't invented, but restored. A language with no ancestors. A civilization that begins at full speed. Now we arrive at the name that sits at the heart of their story, the Anunnaki. Modern fiction has twisted that word into aliens, reptilians, gods, and cosmic overlords. But if we strip away exaggeration and return to the tablets, the closest voices we have to the source, the picture that emerges is not mythical. It is disturbingly practical. Who were the Anunnaki in the oldest texts? They are not described as distant sky gods who float above reality. They live in cities, govern territories, issue laws, track the movements of stars, oversee agriculture and irrigation, sit in councils, assign duties, and, at times, walk among humans. They are portrayed less like omnipotent deities, more like rulers, administrators, a civilization that precedes civilization. Each major Sumerian city was said to be founded by an Anunnaki. Enki brings knowledge, architecture, and irrigation. Enlil grants authority, kingship, and law. Inanna delivers writing, warfare, and the me of civilization. Utu teaches justice and timekeeping. They do not create culture. They hand it over. The Sumerians repeatedly say, kingship descended from heaven. Not discovered. Not developed. Descended. Given. Transferred. The implication is not divine creation. It is inheritance. Religion or record. Every ancient culture has gods. But only one talks about gods who use tools, teach calendars, manage irrigation networks, establish schools, set legal standards, track celestial bodies. Most religions give us miracles. The Sumerians give us administration. That is not mythology. That is management. A dangerous memory. If the Anunnaki were just imaginary gods, we should see them evolve from simple nature spirits into more complex beings over time. But the reverse happens. The oldest references describe them with clarity, roles, responsibilities, jurisdictions. Later myths become exaggerated, poetic, symbolic. Meaning, the further back we go, the more realistic they become. Some culture knew them as people. History turned them into gods. Time turned them into legends. Why did the Sumerians fear forgetting? Civilizations usually brag. We invented writing. We discovered math. We created the calendar. The Sumerians do not. They insist. We remembered. We restored. We rebuilt. As if they lived in the shadow of a disaster so enormous that cities vanished, languages died, skills collapsed, knowledge evaporated. Only fragments survived. Fragments like base 60 mathematics, star maps, flood stories, clay records, creation by process, rulers tied to cosmic cycles. We call this mythology. They called it history. The knowledge they shouldn't have. The Sumerians charted the movements of Venus with precision matching modern astronomy. To record the full Venus cycle, someone needs 8 years of continuous observation. But their earliest tablets already contain complete systems, suggesting someone was watching the sky long before Sumer began. Their medical texts list plants and treatments still used today. Their legal codes resemble later Babylonian, Hebrew, and Greek law. Their architecture aligns with celestial events. Their mathematics still hides in our clocks. Who gave them this? Their answer never changes. The Anunnaki, not gods. That's the part scholars struggle with. The tablets rarely call the Anunnaki creators of everything. Instead, they call them the Great Ones, the lords who decreed the fates, the ones who measured the earth, those who descended, This language, especially measured and descended, isn't religious. It's technical. It implies arrival,
Survey.
establishment, instruction, and then
Departure.
just as mysteriously as they arrived, the Anunnaki vanish from the narrative. Cities remain, laws remain, tablets remain, but the teachers?
Gone. As if their assignment ended.
The most unsettling question: if the Sumerians remembered a lost age, if the flood was real, if civilization rebooted, if the Anunnaki were the mentors of the reboot, then we are forced to consider something chilling. Are we living in the second version of human history? Is our timeline just the part that survived the crash? Is humanity not the beginner, but the successor? Are we not pioneers, but heirs? The Sumerians seem to say yes. They left us a message in clay. We were not the first. We rebuilt. We preserved what we could. Please do not forget again. And now, 5,000 years later, here we are, arguing whether they meant gods or people, while their fingerprints still sit frozen on tablets, whispering across time. Remember us. Remember what was before us. Because if we ever decode what they were trying to preserve, our understanding of ourselves will change forever. If the Anunnaki were real, if Sumer was a restoration, then the proof of that earlier world should be scattered somewhere. Not whole cities, not complete libraries, just traces, fingerprints, ghosts of knowledge too advanced for its era, appearing where it shouldn't. And that is exactly what we find, not just in Mesopotamia, across the world, across cultures that should have never met, across oceans they supposedly couldn't cross. The global puzzle. Take a globe and draw a circle connecting the earliest monumental sites. Mesopotamia, Egypt,
Turkey.
the Indus Valley,
Peru.
Mesoamerica. What you get is not random placement. You get a band of ancient engineering around the Earth, aligned with astronomical precision, built on similar mathematical principles, all emerging suddenly. Civilization is supposed to start once, spread slowly, and evolve gradually. Instead, it erupts in multiple places. Egypt builds pyramids aligned to the stars. Sumer tracks Venus with impossible precision. The Indus Valley has advanced city planning and sanitation. Mesoamerica builds step pyramids and measures cosmic cycles. Peru carves stones with engineering we cannot replicate easily today. No communication. No shared languages. No boats, officially. And yet, they use the same sacred numbers,
Tell the same stories.
worship sky beings who teach civilization, remember a flood, rebuild afterward. It's as if the same seed was planted many times. Different soil, same DNA, ancient maps from a forgotten age. In 1929, researchers discovered the Pyre Reis map, an Ottoman-era chart drawn using sources older than any known civilization. It shows the coastlines of South America accurately, the tip of Antarctica without ice. Antarctica has been buried under ice for thousands of years. No medieval or ancient civilization could have charted it, unless the map was copied from something older, something from before the ice returned, something from the world before the flood. Exactly what the Sumerians claimed existed. A world that knew. Time written in stone. Ancient monuments around the globe encode the same celestial knowledge. Stonehenge tracks lunar cycles. The Great Pyramid encodes pi, phi, and the speed of light. Mayan temples align with solstices and eclipses. Göbekli Tepe tracks constellations. These aren't random alignments. They are calendars carved into architecture. They require generations of observation. Yet they appear suddenly, no learning curve. Like someone unlocked a library. Someone handed over the knowledge. Someone restored what was before. The myth that refuses to die. Myths evolve over time. Details shift. Names change. But the bones of a story remain. Across cultures, across continents, across thousands of years, the same core narrative repeats. There was an advanced age. A catastrophe destroyed it.
A few survived.
They preserved knowledge. They rebuilt civilization. The builders were remembered as gods, sages, or instructors. In Sumer, the Anunnaki. In Egypt, the Shemsahor. In Greece, the Titans and Prometheus. In India, the Devis and Manus. In Mesoamerica, Quetzalcoatl and Viracocha. In China, Fu Xi and Niwa. Different masks, same face. We are the amnesia. Modern humans think progress is linear. We imagine ourselves at the peak. But what if we are looking through ruins, not foundations? What if everything we call ancient is not the start of something, but the recovery of something? What if we are not the pioneers of civilization, but the children of survivors? Children who lost the instruction manual. Children staring at the fragments of a world we barely understand. Every dig, every tablet, every myth is a message. We were not the first, but we are behaving as if we are. The silence that speaks. If the Anunnaki were teachers and architects, if they rebuilt civilization and left, where did they go? Why did they stop? Why did they disappear? Sumerian texts hint at something unthinkable. They left because their task was done. They left because they were forbidden to interfere further. They left because humanity had to stand alone. And yet, they left warnings.
Floods.
Cycles. Resets. The idea that history moves not forward but in circles. Golden ages rise. They fall. Darkness follows. Then someone rebuilds. Until we forget again. The Sumerians were trying to prevent that forgetfulness. Their message was not pride. It was fear. The question that changes everything. If humanity has risen before, if civilizations have been reset, if knowledge was preserved, then are we nearing another cycle? Are we repeating a pattern older than history? Are we ignoring the clay that survived, screaming the same message over and over? This is not the beginning. This is what we managed to save. If everything we've uncovered so far is true, then the most important part of the story isn't the Anunnaki, the flood, or the forgotten age. It's the clay. Because in every reset, every catastrophe, every collapse, clay survives. Paper burns, bronze corrodes, books rot, hard drives fail. But clay remembers. A single fingerprint pressed into wet earth can outlive empires. It can survive fire, war, flood, sand, and 5,000 years of silence. That is why the Sumerians wrote on it. Not to celebrate themselves, to warn us, to leave proof, to tell the future. We were not the first. We rebuilt something older. And the world falls apart more easily than you think. The tablets speak. When archaeologists first found the tablets in Uruk, they didn't understand what they were holding. They thought they were scraps, receipts, lists, records, background noise of ancient life. Then they realized receipts require currency. Currency requires laws. Laws require authority. Authority requires civilization. A receipt is not primitive. It is evidence of a system. Systems do not appear spontaneously. They are inherited. And among those receipts, prescriptions, and school exercises, the Sumerians placed something else. Clues. Fragments of memory. Like people leaving breadcrumbs in a forest they know you'll get lost in. The fingerprints of the forgotten. There is a tablet in a Berlin museum. It looks unremarkable, just another cylinder covered in cuneiform. But if you place your face close enough to the glass,
You see it.
a thumbprint, left by a scribe who lived before the pyramids, before Abraham, before China, before Rome, before everything we think of as history. That thumbprint is older than the idea of time zones, older than most religions, older than every alphabet still in use. That person wanted you to know something. We were here before you. We remembered something old. We try to pass it on. The restoration, not the start. The Sumerians described their civilization with one phrase that appears again and again across tablets, temples, and inscriptions. The restoration of what was before. Not the invention of something new. The restoration. The phrasing is deliberate. You restore what existed. You salvage what was damaged. You rebuild what was broken. You repair what was lost. Civilization wasn't their goal. Civilization was their responsibility. Someone handed them a fragment of something older, perhaps not whole, perhaps not understood, and they guarded it the only way they knew how, by writing it into clay. The fear of forgetting. Imagine surviving a catastrophe so immense that the world has to be remade. Buildings gone, books gone,
Teachers gone.
maps gone. Only stories remain. Stories become myths. Myths become legends. Legends become nonsense. Until one day, someone digs into the ground and finds clay. The Sumerians weren't boasting when they wrote. They were begging.
Do not.
Forget. Again. We didn't listen. We turned their warnings into myths. We laughed at their numbers. We dismissed their history as fantasy. We ignored the fingerprints. We are living the very mistake they tried to save us from. What the Sumerians knew. Civilizations are not permanent.
They rise. They peak.
They collapse. Not just once. Many times. Each time, someone tries to save knowledge. Sometimes it survives. Sometimes it doesn't. The Sumerians caught the torch before it went dark. We inherited the flame. And now, we stand where they once stood. With technologies we barely understand. With systems dependent on fragile infrastructure. With warnings we mock because we believe ourselves eternal. The past is whispering. You are not exempt from the cycle. The question that haunts the clay. What if our skyscrapers become mounds of dirt? What if our satellites fall? What if our servers die? What will remain of us? Not our screens, not our clouds, not our passwords, but fingerprints, just like theirs, pressed into something that does not burn. That is why the clay matters. It isn't history, it's prophecy. It's a message across epochs. Civilization is temporary. Memory is fragile. Only what you preserve survives. The Sumerians preserved what they could. Now the responsibility belongs to us. We like to imagine ourselves standing at the start of history, pioneers of knowledge, explorers of the unknown. But what if we're not at the beginning? What if we are standing at the far end of a story we barely understand? One written and rewritten long before we arrived. What if we are the aftershock, not the epicenter? The Sumerians didn't think they were the dawn of civilization. They believed they were living in the echo of something older, something fractured, something incomplete, something they were trying to copy before it vanished forever. They weren't proud of their achievements. They were afraid of their inheritance. Their words weren't, "See what we created." Their words were, "This is what survived." The wind over Eridu. Picture this. The hot wind sweeps across the empty plains where Eridu once stood. There are no walls now. No temples. No crowds, just scattered sand, broken bricks, and the bones of time. But beneath your feet lies something unimaginable. A city so old the Sumerians called it ancient. A place they believed was the first center of kingship on Earth. Not invented, delivered, restored. If you listen closely, really listen, you can hear what the scribes were trying to say, buried beneath 5,000 years of dust. You did not start this story. Civilization is not a straight line. We were taught this in school.
Primitive, advanced.
Hunter-gatherer, farmer, city builder. Stone, bronze, iron. Myth, science. A clean progression. A ladder. But ladders don't explain Sumer. They don't explain Göbekli Tepe. They don't explain flood layers identical across continents, languages with no ancestors, monuments aligned to the stars, or myths repeated by people who never met. Ladders explain a climb. History whispers a reset. Civilization might not be a staircase. It might be a wheel. Turning. And turning. And turning again. The cycle. Creation.
Rise.
Flourish. Hubris. Catastrophe. Survival. Restoration. Myth. This cycle appears everywhere. In Sumerian tablets. In Greek ages of man, in Hindu yugas, in Mesoamerican worlds, in Egyptian dynasties, in the Bible's garden, fall, flood, covenant. Civilizations don't forget because they are foolish. They forget because forgetting is the default of time. Memory is the exception. The last question, The Sumerians preserved knowledge in clay because they believed the cycle would happen again.
They didn't know when.
They didn't know how. They just knew this: nothing endures unless someone chooses to carry it. So now the question is not, did the Anunnaki exist? Was there a flood? Did we rebuild civilization? Those are distractions. The real question is, are we next? Are we standing where the Sumerians once stood, confusing memory with myth, ignoring warnings written in earth, believing ourselves immune to collapse? If everything ended tomorrow, if power grids died, networks vanished, satellites fell, what knowledge would survive us? What story would the next civilization tell? Would they say, "We began here"? Or would they whisper, as the Sumerians did, "This is what we managed to save"? The clay is speaking. It traveled through heat. It survived fire. It resisted time. It crossed 5,000 years of oblivion to reach you. Not to entertain you,
To warn you.
to remind you, to shake you awake. The story you have heard is not fiction. It is inheritance. It is a relay. The torch is in your hands now.
Do
not forget again.